Welcome to the Soul of Small Business Hidden Heroes, where we delve into the heart and soul of local entrepreneurs, uncovering their passions, values, and the essence that fuels their businesses, forging connections that resonate deeply with our listeners. Join us as we shine a spotlight on the unsung heroes shaping our communities one heartfelt conversation at a time. I'm Beth Rebenstorf, co-host Shane Rebenstorf. And our guest is Lou Silverman with Presidium Law, which I love the name Presidium. I know what that means in Latin. I didn't know that until you told me.
I didn't either. It means protection in Latin.
That's perfect.
Right. So the concept of our business with that name is protecting your legacy, which is what has become my new tagline in BNI.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really, really like that.
Yeah.
So Presidium Law, tell us first of all what it is. And then I'd love to hear a little bit of how the heck you got there.
I'll start how I got there. I've been practicing law since 1981 actively. And for about the first 20 plus years of that, I was in civil litigation of various sorts. That included family law, personal injury law. I did some bankruptcy law. I did real estate litigation. That was interesting because the real estate litigation was working for a title insurance company that I didn't work for them, but they referred cases to me. Those were always interesting cases because they're all so unique. But anyway, I did all of that, and finally in the early 2000s leading up to 2005, I just said, I've had enough of being a jack of all trades. I can't do this anymore. It's exhausting. You can't be on the level of your adversaries because, like if I was trying a personal injury case and involving a back injury in an automobile accident, I had to become a biomechanical expert. I had to become a medical expert, and the massive amount of information that you had to intake was just amazing without the internet.
The level of knowledge and expertise,
right,
which only comes with time.
Which only comes with time and cramming it, So, and my adversaries were all experienced people in their fields, So the lawyer that you're trying your case involving an auto accident that's all he does is he tries auto accident cases. So I finally, my track record was good, but it wasn't sustainable. And so in 2005, I said, I'm going to transition. And I thought, I've been doing some estate planning in this mixture and probate law. I'm just going to now just figure out a way to focus on that alone. And that meant getting out of my partnership that I had been in for about 20 years. So I was going to move on my own. That was a big job.
Adjustment, yeah.
That meant finding the entity that could mentor me to make that transition. And I was fortunate. I discovered an outfit called National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys out of Indianapolis, and their their formula was helping lawyers like me figure out a way to transition through the process to become a specialist in estate planning. So part of that was in 2006, I spent about 5 weeks in Indianapolis at various weeks going through their courtroom training, which was everything from the legal side, how to talk to clients about estate planning topics, how to make yourself understood, how to market, how to network, and then, so that's how I made the transition.
Yeah. And so what led you to focus on that? Because you could have gone in any specialization.
Right. Well, I felt, I think if I had decided that I was going to stay in the litigation mode, you need so much more support staff than I had anymore. It's gotten so involved in terms of computer experts, and now to try a case in a courtroom, which the pandemic kind of messed all that up. But
right.
You really need to be great with computers.
Yeah.
And I also felt that an estate planning practice is one that you could age with. There's not too many 70-year-old litigators anymore. That's really more of a younger lawyer business.
Gotcha.
There may be mentors that are 70, but they're not in there trying cases.
Yeah.
So I felt that in the long run, that was a practice that would allow me to age with the practice better than a lot of the other alternatives.
So at our age, we understand the importance of planning.
Yeah, Shane and I are about the same age.
We get it.
We get it. Yeah.
The younger ones is a different story. So it's interesting. What's the perspective of the younger folks?
I mean, for me, I know it's important, planning the estates. And for me, I'm thinking about, and this is something that I want to be able to give information to other people as well, is, what do I need to be prepared for at my age? Let's say I'm 30 and maybe going to be starting a family at some time in the future. How do I prepare myself? What do I need to have teed up? And then also for all these other people and for my clients and friends specifically, with parents that are getting elderly and stuff, how can I make sure that they're protected and that, all of our assets and their assets are protected as well, that it doesn't go into probate, nothing, weird goes on there.
Right.
Happens all the time.
It happens we see it all the time.
We see it.
Well, I think that you're a unique perspective at your age, because most people your age probably don't see it, but you see it because of the business you're in.
Right. But I think it's important for other people to be aware of it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So why would somebody plan earlier rather than later? What's important about that? I mean, so his age group, why should they?
Well, I think that there's certain planning that is baseline and that is essential for everybody. Now, when I say essential, most people don't do it, but I still think it's essential. So you should have a plan in place for incapacity, because incapacity can happen for any reason. You could be in an automobile accident, you could fall off a ladder, various things. And if you don't, and you're incapacitated, then you have to rely on the court system.
Right.
And the court system in that area of the law is not very friendly. It's called guardianships and conservatorships. So a conservatorship is the appointment of an individual to manage your property and your affairs. A guardian manages your person. So your health care, your residential care, your education, all that kind of stuff. And if you rely on the court for that, the court's going to appoint somebody, maybe not who you would have appointed. Right. And then B, you're requiring a lot of oversight that is expensive. So a conservator generally has to file annual reports with the court. They get very, very heavily scrutinized anymore. Not so much in the past, but they're doing a better job now. So if you're a few dollars off on an accounting of how you spent money, the court accountants will catch it, and they'll throw it back out at you. So you want to be able to choose who's going to do this for me.
Right. And how do you avoid that? How do you avoid going
Well, so the way you avoid it in that area is having a healthcare power of attorney that has mental health care powers. It deals with if I'm incapacitated because of mental health
reasons. And it's
reasons.
so easy.
Oh, it's very easy. And you appoint the person you want. So Shane could appoint you, he could appoint his dad, he could appoint his sister. It's who he wants. And then on the power of attorney for financial side, kind of the same thing. You appoint who you want to handle that, and you trust that they'll do it for you, and you don't need them to be involved with the court. Yeah. So that would be for almost anybody. I mean, even a 20-year-old in theory is an adult. They should have those kinds of things. Yeah. The other area that you get into from that would be more of the estate planning that deals with more with assets. Who gets them if I die? And what kind of assets do I have? Estate planning is very, what I call asset-centric, meaning that each asset has its own little plan to itself. Like an IRA is distributed because you've named a beneficiary, or you should have. Life insurance has beneficiaries. Some
or should have.
Bank accounts, right. So these are all potential accounts that can have beneficiaries, and that trumps a will or a trust. So if you have a trust that says, I want all of my assets on my death to go to the March of Dimes, but you've named your old girlfriend as your beneficiary, she's going to get everything. There's So that's a very important part of that.
That's a really good one, understanding what a beneficiary means. And I think a lot of people are unaware that property, vehicles, accounts, insurance, all of those, you can name them very easily.
You can.
Can you talk to that a little bit?
You may not even know you've done it.
Right.
Yeah, virtually every asset that's out there can be distributed by your naming a beneficiary to it. For real estate, there's a beneficiary deed, which says this is who gets it when I die. For cars, motor vehicle department now has a beneficiary designation form. For bank accounts, as we said, investments, brokerages, IRAs, 401ks, annuities, all of them have beneficiary designation forms that you can use. And if you do that, you could go across the board to where there's nothing left.
Right.
So even if you have a will or don't have a will, those are all going to be governed by that. The problem with that for many people who I see is it's a lot of balls to juggle. So, each one of those beneficiary designations is another ball. And then you got the IRA ball and the 401k and the bank, and they're just not going in sequence.
Right.
So you've got one that's going here and one that's going there, another one they don't have a beneficiary name. It's hard for people to manage all that.
Yeah. And what's the benefit if they do name them?
Well, the benefit is simplicity because it avoids probate.
There was the big one.
That's the reason
Completely.
That's the reason that people are motivated to do it. The problem is that the motivation to avoid probate is is the tail wagging the dog, or the tail wagging the fish, I suppose, too. Because then they're not aware of the consequences.
Yeah.
So if you name, for example, a minor child as a beneficiary, which I see all the time, well, minors don't have capacity. So if a 5-year-old inherits $1 million life insurance policy, they're not going to get $1 million. Somebody has to be appointed by the court as that person's conservator to manage their money for them. So A, you're getting the court system involved, and B, generally because you haven't chosen who that will be, it could be a variety of people could step forward and saying, I'll do it. So that's a bad plan.
Yeah.
Also naming incapacitated beneficiaries, whether they're legally incapacitated, such as developmentally disabled people, but just people that just aren't good with money. Like, let's say if Shane here goes to Vegas every weekend and spends it on booze and gambling, not a good choice to give him $1 million.
Right.
But we see it all the time. So those are the kinds of mistakes that people make by being blinded by this, I want to avoid probate thing,
Right.
So.
Right. So if somebody were thinking about, maybe I should go get some advice, and maybe I should think about this, even though they oftentimes are resisting, what can they expect when they come to you?
When we schedule a consultation, we send a questionnaire form out that some people are reluctant to complete without coming in to meet us. That's okay. But the idea is the more we know, we can kind of help guide you. So if I know that somebody's coming in and they have a very small estate, I'm not going to take them into the whole world of trusts and estate tax laws and all that, because that's not relevant to them. I might talk about what we've been talking about. Do you have an IRA beneficiary, right? Do you have life insurance, things like that? We'll just talk about the range of possibilities. And I'm real big on graphics, so I'll put up on the screen, in the big TV screen, we'll put up, graphics. We can show them what this looks like and kind of a flow chart that leads one thing to the next.
Yeah, a lot of people are visual.
It's very visual to see it all.
Yeah.
That's
helpful.
I kind of call it the 5,000-foot view. You can see how all the pieces fit together. And we don't charge for the initial consultation for estate planning. So if people decide they don't want to go forward, that's their choice. But most people do, because once they realize what their options are and what they should be doing, most people go forward. Yeah. So
I mean, that just speaks to one of the reasons we launched this podcast of small business, soul of the small business, and the hidden heroes within it. It's such a huge, a lot of people when they die, I'm at the age where I've seen a lot of it and had to go through it. Some people leave such a mess for the people that, to just go through that. It's overwhelming anyway. And then when it's not planned out, it's such a mess for the loved one who's left behind. And so the heroism with helping somebody navigate through that is really underestimated until you're faced with it.
Yeah.
And yet, a little bit of planning and understanding early on oh my gosh, it
It
just
make a huge
eliminates so
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
So first of all, I thank you for doing that.
course.
But I also know that not only are you a hero in the work that you do in the business that way, helping. I mean, how many families have you helped in your career? Heavens, right?
Well, I think we counted over 5,000 files that we had to figure out what are we going to do with them all
Right.
because they dated back so long.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot.
The ripple
A
effect
lot,
of
yeah.
that. So you're
The ripple effect,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
Presidium law, you're protecting, but you're also
Right.
educating, and I
Yeah.
I so appreciate that you'll do a consultation, complimentary,
Yeah.
so you can educate them and they
I
can
love-
decide.
I wish that I had become a law professor because I think education is fun.
Oh yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
fun to impart knowledge
Yeah.
and seeing the people, yeah, I get that, I get
Yeah.
that. you know.
And so that's one of the ways that you contribute to
Yeah.
our community. And we both agree that small business is the background
Yeah.
of,
Right.
pretty much everything that we do certainly in the services world. But I know there's a bunch of other things that you do as well in our community that a lot of people are probably not at all aware of. Talk a little bit about all the committees that you are on.
You know, some of this goes back to when I went through that transition to the sort of the jack of all trades to the estate planning, narrowing trust practice. Part of the the education that I received was how to network, how to build relationships, and how to sort of weave yourself into the community. So, a lot of lawyers, networking and building relationships isn't as critical and I'll give you an example, a divorce lawyer, somebody that just does divorce. Divorce is a very unpleasant experience, I've been there, done that. And so I'm not likely to want to get divorced again, and I'm not likely to go look for that lawyer again, right?
Right.
So it was, even though I liked the guy, it was a one and done kind of a deal. But in my work, relationship building is key because I want my clients to be able to trust that I'll be
Right.
there, to like me, to feel like the process was a good process, that it was painless kind of thing.
Right.
And I want their children to come see me, and I want their neighbors to come see me. So part of that was developing a philosophy of, how am I going to get sort of ingrained, and part of it was networking. So that's when I started joining networking groups, and I've been in quite a few of them. Volunteering, getting on boards, getting on commissions. And that sort of, instills in you the fact that this is important, so yes, I had a motivation to do it all. It was a business-related reason.
Right.
I wasn't retired and just wanted to volunteer. But it sort of is contagious, and it builds on itself.
Yeah.
Because you see the need in the community for the various services that
Yeah.
we provide, whether it's to homeless people or, just like I have friends that are on the Parks and Rec Commission to help with, planning for parks and golf course and just things that they are interested in. The cities need volunteers for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many volunteers are needed.
Yeah.
And so
And
I
you're
got
on a lot
involved.
of them. You're on a lot of them.
Yeah, so I got involved with, the first one that I got involved with early on was, was the very early Tempe Center for the Arts. Before Tempe Center for the Arts was built
Right.
on the Rio Salado,
Yep.
it had a little, just a little building on the north end of Mill Avenue, near where Monty's
Right.
used to be.
Yeah.
So I was on their board for a while. It was a very small board and a very small identity. But then I got on the Tempe Community Action Agency board, which is a major
Yeah.
league.
They do a lot of good work.
They do a lot of good work in the community. In fact, the city, pretty much relies on Tempe Community Action Agency to help with the homeless problem and feeding the poor and health-related issues. So a lot of care that comes out of that. And then the director at the time suggested that I get involved with Tempe Leadership. So I did that. I applied for Tempe Leadership, which I thought, in retrospect, was one of the smartest moves I've ever done because of how that really connects you with the community.
Yeah.
And not only connects you with your class of people, which is about 20 people that are going through a class for 9 months learning about the city in sort of an immersion approach, but all the alum that you get to meet.
Yeah.
I mean, just about every mayor of Tempe has been a Tempe leadership alum, or the city council. And I'm sure that's true in Gilbert and Chandler and all the other cities.
Yeah.
And then from that, I got on the board of Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, which is now called Sonoran University of Health. And they provide, I mean, they're one of the few naturopathic universities in the country. So if you were to go see a naturopathic physician in the West, good chance they went to this school. Yeah. And then I got on the board of Tempe Leadership, and I was president of Tempe Leadership for a year. And then I'm back on the board of Tempe Community Action Agency again, and I'm the chairperson this year. So yeah, it does. It kind of gets contagious because you like that connection. And you like feeling like you're helping.
Well, it takes your skill set, your wisdom, and all the things that, all your gifts, you can really share.
Yeah, so like
rather than keep them to yourself.
On our Tempe Community Action Board this year and last, we started looking into the acquisition of a property in Tempe to build a standalone building. So there's a couple of realtors on the board. They've been integral because their skills have helped in that process. And there's a banker and there's a lawyer. So everybody's skills participate to help in that process, so.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So what's something else that we might not know about Lou Silverman?
Well, a number of things. One thing that you know, because you heard me speak about it, but I've been obsessed all my life with a little incident that happened early in my life that didn't happen to me. I was a spectator of it, but in 1966, the basketball team in El Paso, that was called Texas Western, had a basketball coach named Don Haskins, and he had been in El Paso for about 3 years when he, came to coach there. Well, he recruited black athletes in a day when that wasn't done in Texas, zero. As you moved further west, yes, but back in Texas, there were no black athletes in the South, and that included Texas. And he recruited black athletes, and in 1966 was that perfect storm, and the team won the NCAA basketball championship. And they beat Kentucky, which was never had a black player, so it created this perfect dichotomy of black versus white. And it's been credited with one of the most important feats in the civil rights movement, because people had to see what was happening, that these guys can play and they're going to play, and if we don't recruit them, somebody else is. Like the next year, Kentucky had a black player. So that was really neat to be part of that, because I was a kid, I was 12 years old. They played in a gym that was like an old high school sized gym. And I went to see all those games. Those players were, you saw them around town, and that was just really neat for me. Yeah. But it also taught me a life lesson, which is that those guys most of them came from inner city, Detroit, Cleveland, etc. And they got together and they overcame a massive, chip on their shoulder to accomplish what they did. Yeah. So it gave me sort of like, if they could do it, I think anybody could do it. I think you can do what you set out to do if you are intent to do it. Another thing that I guess not a lot of people would know today is that I went through about a 10-year period starting in my mid-50s. So I was about 55, and I started doing triathlons. Yep. So I did about 10 years of triathlons through about 5 years ago. I kind of, petered out. But that was fun. And again, it was sort of like, it's an accomplishment to do it.
Yes, it is.
I never did them to win them. I did them to finish them. And I did. And when you finish them, it's an accomplishment and you feel real good about it.
So is there a lesson in the triathlons that you carried over into your business?
Well, I think just, soldier on, maybe, it's like just work hard and accomplish it, and don't give up. There are moments when I absolutely wanted to give up. When I first got in the water on my first swim, where you get in Tempe Town Lake and that water is just black, and you're getting kicked by other swimmers, and that was the moment of like, can I do this? And it's like you say, okay, I'm going to do this. So yeah, there is a certain amount of accomplishment that you can rely on. Like, yeah, I can do it.
Right.
You know. So.
So going back to your business,
Uh-huh.
and because there's a lot of attorneys that
No.
just like there's a lot of realtors.
Yeah.
And like in real estate, it's 90% of the business is done by 10% of the agents. I don't know what it is for attorneys,
Yeah,
but
right.
it's pretty remarkable. But there's a broad spectrum of expertise and 10,000 hours to mastery. So what is different, would you say, about you and others?
Well, I think number one is that I'm a specialist. So I'm the Arizona State Bar Association has specialists in various fields. So they have a probate, trust, and estate planning field.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to be a specialist, you have to have 10 years of exclusive practice. You have to have a certain number of hours of education, but then you also have to pass their test.
Right.
And I think that it's important in that kind of a field because it's not general. It's like it's very specific, and the law changes a lot, and customs change, and the state of the art changes. And if you're a generalist, I just don't think that you can be on top of all that.
Yeah.
Any lawyer can write a will, but that's not what you're really paying for. You're paying for the expertise of getting a good product and knowing, because of years of experience, what works and what doesn't work.
What should they look for in a really good, skilled probate will and estate attorney?
Well, I think number one, I'm not saying that being a specialist is essential, because there's good lawyers that aren't.
Right.
There's some lawyers that just don't feel there's a lot of value in going through that process. But I think if you're talking with a specialist right off the bat,
Right.
in any field,
Right.
you guys have specialists in your world too.
Yeah.
You know that they've been through, the ropes, and they've learned a few things, and so number one, that would be important. But then number two, I think in the interview process, if they're not able to answer your questions, and if they're not saying, well, if I have to get back to you on that one, on some pretty basic stuff, then I'd say they probably just don't really know enough to be the person that I'd want to choose.
Yeah. I'm curious, at your age group, what is it that they look for, and what is it that they dismiss and say, yeah, I'm moving on? Because you guys get information in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different at what they're looking at, but I mean, a lot of us are looking at things online and looking at information that we receive online, or maybe something that happened recently from a story of a friend, and then you learn that, oh shoot, maybe I do need to look into this more, and maybe I should see what my parents will
what kind of mess they're going to leave you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How can we clean this up? And obviously, it's even more so for when grandparents, at that level, when they're going into, you really need to be a step ahead of it. What I've learned from you is, that if you're a step ahead of it, then it's much easier for the process. But if you wait to the last minute to try to clean everything up, it seems like it's just going to be a mess.
Well, waiting for the last minute, I can't tell you how many times we'll get calls from people who have been planning a trip probably for years. Just like this massive trip that they've been wanting to take all their life. They call us on a Thursday because they're leaving Monday.
Oh my.
It's like, come on,
So we call that in our world, we're really good problem solvers, as are you.
Yeah.
But if we can be a problem avoider for our clients and the people that we help, that's far more valuable.
Right.
And that's exactly what you're doing, is avoiding what they don't even know. What they don't. And that's so hard to communicate.
It is.
It's so hard to, it's the iceberg. They only see the tip, but the stuff underneath.
So many people don't understand that it's necessary, or that it's something that needs to be done. I mean, even at 20 years old, it's something that I don't have a will as of right now, but I know it's something that I need to do, or have these things set up, and owning properties and having a property beneficiary.
Do you have powers of attorney?
I don't.
See?
I don't have anything.
So if you had an automobile accident and you got hurt, who do you want to make your medical care? I assume your mother and father, but so.
Yeah.
And do they know how much advanced life support you'd want to have?
Right.
Do you want to be, in a vegetative state. And these are just things that you have to be thinking about.
Yeah.
No judgment on
Yeah.
it. Just
No, and these are things that many people my age that I'm somewhat aware of, but it's like it's a subject that you don't really dive into and do the things. You're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, but where do
you
I
bring up a good point.
Where do I go to do that, or how? It's not something that is taught to everyone.
Right.
No, in fact, it's probably not taught to anyone. Really, that's not a subject that they don't. They don't have courses in high school or college on how to be an adult.
Right.
It's sort of, you have
Or
to
a
learn that
parent.
on your own.
Or a parent.
Yeah, or a parent for sure. Yeah.
But they do for business.
Yeah. Another thing too in this similar area is that if you are a university student or have a university student child, those laws that protect privacy, even though you're the parent, and even if you're paying the tuition, you can't get much information.
That's right.
So there's it's called FERPA, Federal Education, I don't know what the rest mean, but it's called FERPA. There's a form that will allow a parent or a third party to get information. So
like HIPAA.
They could call the dorm and say, hey, my son Shane hasn't called me in 2 days. Could you check on him? Well, if they have your consent, or Shane has given that consent, they can go check and call you and say, yeah, he's in his room, he's studying.
Yeah.
But likely that isn't true. But
Right.
But anyway, that's important too. So we do a lot of those FERPAs, just as really almost like a courtesy as part of the plan, just so they don't have those.
Yeah. So are there any other areas that, other than what you've talked about, that you do in business or that your firm does?
Well, so associated with estate planning, because estate planning is a big umbrella that covers a lot of stuff, because virtually any asset that you own and how it's titled or how it's, pay on death, et cetera, is an estate plan. So business planning, succession planning, people can own an LLC. Say you and your husband have an LLC. You can own it as community property with right of survivorship. So you can have that plan built right into your company. So if you died, it'd be no probate or anything like that. The other is if you have a trust, you can hold that title to the company in your trust. So those are all how we sort of incorporate business planning into
business
the
planning.
whole,
There's a
into
lot
the
more
bigger
to it.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the earlier you start, actually,
If you have companies and things like that.
Yeah. So what I also found interesting is in your business, it's not just people that you help. You also help the furry ones.
Yes. Yeah.
That was surprising.
Well, that was fun because you're referring to my bringing my dog to the meeting.
Yeah.
I had been wanting to bring Lucy because I take her everywhere. I was going to bring her today, but I didn't know if you guys would care.
That would have been
because
fun.
she just sits on my lap.
Yeah. She's going to be upset.
She just sits on my lap and says, "Okay, I'm happy." So I thought, well, I'd like to bring her to a meeting, and I think the only way that I could probably do it without getting criticized for it is make my presentation about pets. But yeah, pet planning.
A lot of people, pet planning.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think about it, so we bring it up. We have on our questionnaire, do you want to ask us about pet planning? Because a lot of people do worry that, well, what's going to happen to my pets? And not only that, but then not only who's going to take care of them, but how can they afford to take care of them? So that's built into the estate planning for pets part of the process.
A lot of people, that would be their number one concern.
Yeah, and there are some cases, I gave some examples in my presentation where people have set aside millions of dollars for
that's crazy.
I've seen there's a show about that, about a dog, German Shepherd or something, that gets left like tens of millions of dollars, and the mansion, everything is all
I can't remember the case exactly, so I don't want to guess, but there was a well-known case where a person left aside a massive amount of money for their pet, and the court reduced it. So somebody challenged it and said, that's crazy, and the court said, yeah, let's come up with a number that's not so stupid.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you could give advice to somebody that doesn't have a will, that hasn't, that's thinking about it, been putting it off, been procrastinating, and they could only do one thing, what would you say they should do?
Pick up the phone and call and make an appointment, because that'll start the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Because then we'll send out the questionnaire that we want them to complete. And even if they don't do that, come in, because once you've talked about it and have been educated,
Right.
at least you can make more informed choices.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you don't know what you're,
Yeah,
what
there's
do they
nothing to
say?
lose because it's complimentary. At least they'll learn,
Right.
and then if they decide to do nothing or go somewhere else,
I think Yogi Bear may have said you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So you don't know.
Absolutely.
So take advantage of it.
And
Absolutely.
at what point in life would you recommend someone does that? Earlier the better?
Well, again, if you were to call me and once we've kind of figured out, I don't know where you are. I'm not. You could have 30 rental properties. I don't know that, but if somebody your age probably doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
We would probably just talk about these are the things that I absolutely recommend you should have, no matter what.
Yeah.
And then I would want to look to see where are you in terms of your asset acquisition now. Do you own property? Do you have an IRA? Do you have a brokerage account? How's it titled? So
Yep.
you just got to investigate.
Okay.
So everybody's different. There's no normal,
Right.
because everybody's different.
Yeah.
So
It's like a health checkup.
yeah.
You
I
really need to do some blood work.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to have a checkup.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. Any other questions?
No.
Any place you want to go from here?
Nothing I can think of
How
right
about
now.
you, Lou?
Any
Because
other
this is
topics?
something that can go.
no, I think that's
Yeah.
a good introduction to what we do and sort of our commitment. I guess I didn't talk about the transition, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you.
Why?
Well, maybe you do because this will go out to some people that knew you and Lou Silverman.
Yeah, so I should probably talk about that.
So let me serve that up to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So you just went through a transition of your own business, and now
Right.
you're in a partnership, and the Presidium. So how is that different, and what should people know about that?
Well, over the last few years, one of their questions to me was, what happens if I need you and you're not around? And that question came up often enough that I needed to have a better answer. Because I've had an associate now for 7 years, Tommy Farr, but Tommy has not been interested in being a succession to my practice. So he said, no, not interested. So I had to go and start looking. And so I met this fellow by the name of Bernard Johnson, whose office is at Ray and Stapley. And he does exactly what I do, almost verbatim, but he's in his mid-40s. So he was a good candidate for succession. So he and I had been talking about it for about a year. And we finally said, I just said, look, we got to pull the trigger or not, because, I have to get this going. So we agreed that he would purchase my practice in the form of a merger, that this would have occurred January 1, so it occurred a month ago. And that I would commit to a 2 full year of, full-time, and then sort of a transition into less than full-time. So I can introduce him to all the people that I know, and vice versa. Continue to be labor, because he needs people doing the labor. And then, but it gives me a succession so that.
Well, it gives your clients a succession.
Yeah, so they're not as worried about it now. It's
Yeah.
like, somebody will be here, and now we have a much younger generation in the office. Yeah, everybody in his team is younger, so the whole crew is younger. So
I can relate to that.
yeah, my big fear was literally, and this is what a lot of lawyers fear, is that you're just going to die at your desk. You'd never have a succession plan, so eventually you just plop over.
Right.
So
right.
I'd rather die in a river somewhere than I would, at my desk. So.
What is your biggest challenge in your work?
I would say the biggest challenge in my work day, as opposed to in my work, are the one-offs. They're constant. I don't know if you get those too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rare day that I get to get done what I thought I was going to get done, because so much is incoming in terms of, these little problems. And can you look at this? And can you answer that question? And those add up over the course of a day.
Yeah.
And I blame technology for that a lot, because I've practiced in two different eras of practice law, I should say. The first era of my world was no computers, no cell phones. I remember when we got our first cell phones, my partner and I, they were these big brick-looking things, and they had a big antenna on them, and you had to plug them into.
And you were so cool when you had it.
And I said to him when he said, "I think we should get them," I said, "Why? Why would we possibly need these things?" Right? And you plugged them into your lighter,
cigarette lighter.
So those days was like you could go to work and you could just really get done what you came to work to get done.
Right.
Because the only way people were going to get to you was on the telephone.
Yeah.
Then the fax started to,
Right.
and then finally when the internet, or when the computers started to arrive, and then the email started to pop up, and now it's just, God almighty, people will try to, reach me on Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, emails, faxes.
And it's not that you don't want to help them. It's
It's like somebody said, "Hey, you didn't respond to me," and I said, "Well, how did you try to reach me?" Well, Instagram. It's like I don't check Instagram messages. I mean, that's not on my radar screen.
Right.
So it's a challenge. I think technology has brought out a lot of challenges in terms of our ability to focus. Our ability to stay on task, because you get in the habit of being bouncing all over the place. So.
And then disengaging from what you're doing and re-engaging.
And re-engaging. I think it's I think in a lot of respects, my dad, who was an attorney in El Paso, and when you walked into his office, even in the 90s, it looked like you were walking into 1955. He had that look, that old office look. I think he was a better lawyer for that. I think he was more focused. I think he got his work done without a lot of interruptions. But that's not the world we live in anymore.
So how are you navigating that challenge?
It's tough. It really is. You tend to be kind of frenetic, and you kind of bounce around, and you have to get really good at, like, let's say that this is a document that I have to review, and maybe in the course of a day I'll get it done, but 10 interruptions will come in the meantime, so I'll leave it there and then I'll come back to it. It's not healthy. I don't think that any psychiatrist or psychologist would say that that's a healthy environment for us to be in, but we're stuck with it.
Well, and I think every industry is faced with that.
Yeah, we're just totally.
And if you want to give the personal service, your option is to hand off your communication to somebody else, and sometimes that's a better.
Sometimes it
option,
can be
but,
if you can.
Yeah. So, what are some of the myths in probate in particular? So, I've had a few people. We've gone through a slew of deaths here lately, and one of them was, they don't have a will, but that's all right. We're just going to decide among ourselves, and it doesn't need to go through probate. We're just going to do it. What happens there?
The only way that would be 100% true would be if it's just stuff, because
no, there's property.
Okay, but if it was just stuff, if you die and all you have is stuff.
So what if the heirs sell it? They just sell it and they don't go through probate. What could happen?
Well, what is the it part though?
A house, real property.
You can't do that.
What if they did?
It's because of title. So title trumps everything. As I've said, if you own a house and it says, and your title says Beth Rebenstorf, a single woman, and you die, nobody has capacity to sell that house. You're gone.
Right. Unless they had a successor.
Well,
beneficiary.
Well, of course. I'm just talking about the simple.
They don't have that.
They don't have that. They just, hey, mom had a house and we want to sell it. Nobody can sell that house. The title company won't close escrow on that house. So that's where probate is.
Right. What happens is they actually enter into a contract,
and then they usually get the bad news.
And then they go to close, and now you've got a buyer who's very upset.
Yeah. So now I could be interviewing you because you've experienced this, right? So then the title company says, not maybe knowing that you've passed away, here's all the places that Beth
used to sign.
No, she died. Oh, I see. So that's where
I'm the heir. I get to decide.
So that's where probate is needed, because the only person who can sell that house is a personal representative of your estate.
Which?
And then they're going to say, well, that's me.
Right.
Because mom wanted me to do it.
Right.
They say, well, no, that's not good enough. You have to be appointed in a will, or you have to have priority under statute, because if there's no will, there's priority.
Right.
And the court has to appoint you. Your mom can only nominate you. So the court, so that's probate. That's what probate's about.
And that a lot.
And that, so that'd be a nice myth.
Yeah, that's a big
that'd be a
myth.
good myth.
Yeah. And then the whole issue of NOPA, notice of proposed action. Why do I have to do that?
Yeah.
Why do I have to post that and advertise it?
But I would say the other myth is probably caused by some deception in advertising and horror stories that are not from Arizona, because there are a handful of states, California being one of them, Florida being another, that there are statutory costs for probate. So if you died and you had a $2 million estate, which these days isn't much because your house could be half of that or more, the attorney that's going to represent the estate in the probate is going to charge a statutory fee that might be $20,000, $25,000. And then the personal representative is entitled to a statutory fee, could be another 20 or 25. So right off the bat, we have a $50,000 out-of-pocket cost for probate. Well, we can't do that in Arizona. Arizona does not allow percentage fees to be charged. It has to be based on the labor and the time. So it's all, generally speaking, billed by the hour, or the billing is based on how much time is involved. So our horror stories are generally nothing like that. A probate in Arizona could maybe cost $5,000, but it would be rare to see it cost in the kind of money that you see in other states. But so there's that fear, and that's propagated by the advertisements that talk about probate being this expensive, horrible thing. And I'm not saying that probate is desirable. I'm just saying the myth is that it's going to cost millions of dollars. It's not.
It might in certain
cases. It might in rare cases be very expensive, but that's going to be because of the nature of the case, not just because of the value of stuff. Right. So that is a pretty important myth to distinguish us from other states. That is a big selling point in California.
Oh yeah.
So in California, if you have a $2 million estate and the lawyer can tell you in probate this is going to be a $50,000 fee, but guess what? I'll only charge you $10,000 for your trust. Oh great, I'll pay it. Yeah. When that's double what you pay in Arizona or more.
Right.
So that's we're on different playing fields completely. Yeah. In fact, I teach ethics a lot in probate law and trust law, and I compare the fees of other states. And I always say I wish I was a lawyer in California, because I would have made so much more money than I made because of those minimum fee schedules. But
any other myths?
Oh man, myth would be
misconceptions.
A will. A lot of people have a myth about what's valid in a will. So a will that somebody types up like this and signs it is not a valid will, because it has to be witnessed by two people.
Witnessed but not notarized?
Yeah, the notarization is not critical.
But witnessed.
But witnessing is critical. So if only one witness, not valid. So even if all we did is if I signed it here and then you guys signed it here, that would be enough to make it valid. So that would be a myth, because I've gotten probates where people have prepared multiple wills over the years. They liked writing wills. They were good at it. They had their old manual typewriter and they typed up wills. You could tell it was an old underwriter typewriter, but none of them were witnessed. So none of them were valid, which is sad.
That's
because if
sad.
you die without a will, it's intestate.
Right.
And if you die intestate, your heirs are your beneficiaries no matter what your will said. Period.
So what happens if you want to adjust the will? Does that have to be witnessed then as well?
Yeah, so that's called a will codicil, which is just an amendment, and that has to be witnessed also. Now, I've seen people, I don't have a pen on me, but they'll take the other pen, thank you. So they'll take their pen and they'll say, well, I want to change that. I'm going to change that to Shane Rebenstorf. He's going to get my pet cow. Well, that's not valid. So that'll be ignored.
Even if they initial
Now,
it and
no,
sign
because
it?
it's not witnessed. So you
Yeah.
still, the formality that took to make the will is still needed.
Yeah.
Now, if I sign it and then 2 witnesses sign it,
Maybe.
probably.
Yeah.
But, but on the other hand, holographic wills are valid. A holographic will is 100% in your own handwriting. So if I just write it out, I, Lou Silverman, I could write my whole will out, and that doesn't
And
need
then that
to be
does not have to
witnessed.
be witnessed.
Right. What has to come out of that is testamentary intent, because some of these don't look like wills, but you have to kind of draw it out, like
Right.
I want my house to go to Mary, and I want my dog to go to Steve, and I want my IRA, and then at the bottom I sign it. It's probably enough that the court's going to look at that and say, yeah, it's pretty clear what this
What the
person
intention
wanted.
was.
So but that's a myth in terms of how do I create a valid will. Another myth is that if you are divorced and you don't update your beneficiaries, your ex-spouse is going to receive everything. Arizona has a statute that automatically revokes any disposition to a former spouse, which has caused kind of a unfortunate ending on the backside, because I've had cases where people had life insurance, had named their former spouse, got a divorce, never updated it, they died, and they got remarried in the meantime, and they had wanted their former spouse. So like I promised my former spouse, look, I'm going to leave this $200,000 life insurance to you. You'll be taken care of. Don't worry about it.
Maybe I'll get a second policy for this spouse.
Well, they never updated it, so it's automatically revoked, no matter what the intention was. So the new spouse, by law, is the beneficiary.
Another good reason to do a consultation.
Yeah,
Those
so
are all
those-
the things that you kind of uncover.
See, it's the ignorance of not knowing that
Right.
is what causes these problems, because what you don't know, you don't know. That's the corollary of what you do know, you do know. So, anyway, yeah, those are all sort of the myths. I mean, they go on and on and on, but those are some of
Those
the
are some biggies.
Yeah, right.
And those can have big impact.
Oh,
Oof.
huge impact, yeah. So,
Okay.
all right.
Well, thanks, Lou.
Okay, well, thanks for
Appreciate
having
you.
me. I appreciate it.
It